Hi, everybody. I am Katherine Stone with the CX Foundation, and we are absolutely thrilled to welcome the CEO and co-founder of Convoso, which has been called the Ferrari of dialers. So thank you to Nima Hakimi for being here with us today. We are thrilled to talk all things Convoso and all things dialers.
Thank you for having me, Catherine. Looking forward to talking more about us and getting this started.
Thank you. So, Nima, right off the bat, for the random person on YouTube who has stumbled across this video, has no idea what Convoso is, not even entirely sure what a call or contact center software is, how
Yeah.
would you describe Convoso and what you all bring to the table to them?
Great question. We don't want to get too technical because
Right.
then kind of just trying to decipher what it is. But essentially, if you're a business that, has an online presence, you're generating leads. It could be, an insurance agency, health insurance, could be a solar company, home improvement company. They're going and running ads on Facebook, Google, and getting people to fill out their form to get a quote on their service. Well, our product is the Outbound contact center software that essentially we're helping you connect those leads on the phone. And ultimately, what matters there is you get the lead on the phone so you can convert them into an appointment, a sale, something like that. And our focus is really on B2C based businesses and whatnot.
Absolutely. And thank you for that explanation. I think even my mother could understand that. So beautiful job there. She's kind of my marker for what's comprehensible to the everyday public. So I think she's got it for sure. Let's talk a little bit more about Convoso's story because, and you've said this in multiple interviews, it's one of continuous reinvention, right? It's a almost 20-year long evolution that started from a favor that you did for your cousin who worked in the mortgage industry. And now you're, as you said, this AI powered B2C sales and outbound dialing platform with a 40% CAGR, CAGR, however you'd like to pronounce that. And as you kind of made that transition from VoIP to AI, was there a single pivotal moment or maybe a specific customer challenge that really convinced you that it was time to do a complete platform rebuild, and that you really had to rebuild entirely just for survival?
Yeah, I mean, look, back then we were just learning about the business that our customers were in. We didn't really come from that space, right? We were just very
Mhm.
entrepreneurial. It was just all about, hey, let's build some cool software that can make calls through your computer. Back then, this was very, very new, it wasn't something that was out there. And we wanted to do that in an affordable manner, and we did that. But it got to a point where our customers really care around they're very much bottom line driven, and a sales
Mhm.
organization that's needs to bring in revenue. They need to make sure the ROI is there. At the beginning, it was just able to just function in a way where it was affordable. You don't have to get hardware to do that. That was back then when the cloud was just very new. You were able to do things through the internet versus a big giant computer and massive things like that. And so, the shift happened when we really truly understood what's important to our customer. To our customer, it's really important that, if I get technical, contact rate, which is essentially what percentage of my leads can I connect with on the phone. And once we understood that that's what's most important to them, we were able to redesign the platform to find ways to help them do that while doing it, of course, in a compliant manner, because outbound dialing, there's a lot of compliance from the state level, federal level. There's so many things that you have to um, be aware of. So we were able to find a sweet spot of how do you do that while making sure that you're able to connect with your leads. And that's why our North Star in our company ultimately is to provide our customers with the highest contact rate on their leads while staying compliant.
To piggyback on top of that, how have you, over the past 18, 20 years, seen this idea of connecting with leads evolve from just, oh my God, we got one, somebody actually answered their phone, to really building a genuine connection with qualified leads? And how would you say Convoso's technology has helped your customers adapt to that shift?
Really, back in the day, telemarketing back then was just, hey, we're going to buy a list of phone numbers in a certain city, zip code, and then let's just dial away. Well, that doesn't work these days anymore because
Mhm.
especially now that consumers are just more accessible through your cell phone,
Right.
you have to be more responsible in why you're reaching out to somebody, which is why the marketing is so important around, making sure that you're able to get leads where somebody's actually interested in your product and service. And then so what
Right.
becomes really important now, what's changed back then is if you make too many calls,
Mhm.
now as it's on your phone, what happens, right? Everybody gets a phone call, it's a spam, scam, telemarketer.
Blocked. Mhm.
They're blocked. And that's death to any business who's relying on their customers to pick up their phone
Right.
to get service. So for us, really, it was, well, how do we ensure that you are not just able to reach out by calling them, like omnichannel, which means being able to text them, email them, and call them. So you can try different outreach strategies to connect with the lead, get them on the phone. Then what's become more important is, well, how do you manage what is often times referred to as the caller ID reputation, right?
Absolutely.
You have to know, well, first of all, how do you dial in a way where you're not overly being aggressive to where the number gets flagged? And unfortunately, because of the bad actors, the telecom carriers, they're flagging and over flagging calls, even for legitimate business who have consent.
Right.
So today, consent is no longer enough. Even if you have consent from the consumer to call, what the consumer wants is to do it in a responsible manner. They don't want to be bombarded by 10 calls in one day.
Right.
That doesn't work. So you have to have a system in place where you can set up a cadence where it automatically tapers down on the attempts if somebody doesn't answer. Because listen, not everybody answers the phone right away.
Right.
You might be at work, you might be in the middle of something, you might be filling out the form, but you may not be there to answer. So the
Mhm.
way we do that differently is we have a smart cadence on how you engage the lead and re-engage them if they don't answer. And then we have a way where we manage the caller ID reputation, whereas most competitors, they do what's called setting up a phone bank, where they're literally having your caller ID that's being used as a customer shown on a bank of phones to see if it's showing up as scam, spam, telemarketer. That is how they know if it's showing up. And that doesn't work well because telco carriers, they don't like that you're abusing their service.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so one, you should definitely register your phone, all of your numbers. There's, the three analytics engines where you can register, say, hey, I'm a legitimate business.
Mhm.
Here's who I am. Here's why I'm calling. You do that. Unfortunately, that's not enough, but it's a good step to take. Then
Right. Mhm.
what we do we just launched our product Convoso Ignite,
Mhm.
where we will look at every single number that you use for your calling campaigns and give it a health score from 0 to 100 based on some proprietary data, based on AI, where we're looking at information so we can figure out what is the best number to use on a lead that can most likely get that's working well, that's not potentially misflagged by the carrier. And it does that in real time so that you can maximize the connectivity on your rate. So that's I'm getting really into it. I get really passionate about it. There's a lot of things. To be honest with you, the answer is there's not one thing you have to do right for your outbound calling campaigns to do well. There's a series of things you have to do. And some of our customers, they generate their own leads. They might do it on Facebook, Google, TikTok, different places. Then they buy leads from third-party lead generators, and they might have 10 different sources. Well, not every source is going to do well. So you need to run a report, um, calculate your cost per acquisition to
Mhm.
find out which one of those sources convert the best. So you're not over dialing people. You might be targeting people who are not that interested in your product, but they were curious.
Mhm.
So you got to look at that. You got to look at when there is a point of diminishing returns. After how many call attempts, typically like does the lead convert? Don't dial past those number of attempts.
Mhm.
So what we see customers doing in the past, and we're educating them, is you got to know when to stop because nowadays you're going to pay a price. The price is the consumer gets frustrated, your call is going to get flagged. Now calls you make on your newer leads may not go through because of that.
Right. And that's certainly a real risk. And am I right in my understanding that it is different in some cases from carrier to carrier? So maybe my business number looks fabulous on one carrier, but the other one thinks that I am just a criminal that's just bombarding people all the time.
Yeah, so AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, right, the three largest carriers, they
Mhm.
have their own partnerships with these analytics engines and their own ways of deciding what number is a legitimate call versus one. And they're not perfect. They don't get it right, right? They're trying to figure it out. So that is very, very, very true. And that's why we also monitor it on a carrier level. But it's more than that,
Mhm.
Catherine. It's much deeper than that. It could be even on T-Mobile, if you're calling an 818, a lead with the 818 area code versus a 954 area code. Well, 818 might show up as totally fine. Your number shows up fine, but on a 954, it might show up as flagged, it might flag it. So we've built intelligence in that will help you determine how to use the best caller ID, not just on the carrier level, but by also the specific area codes. And it goes deeper than that on how we look at it to make the best decision for your call campaigns.
And is that all a part of the new Convoso Ignite platform feature functionality? All of that is built into that.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that was the impetus for bringing Ignite to the forefront, right? These carriers getting incorrectly flagged, not being able to connect with leads, losing out on really quality leads that probably would have been interested had their call not been flagged as spam.
Yeah, for us, it's innovation is very important. So there are third parties out there that do something like this. There's a very variation, but we don't want to depend on a third party. Your whole operation relies on making sure your reputation of a caller ID is clean. And so for us to depend on a third party and maybe they go out of business or something happens, well, guess
Mhm.
what? Then we are basically not a business. So for us, we were very much all about how do we provide this value to our customers ourselves with our own technical know-how. At Convoso, our core value, one of them is continuous growth, and we take that
Mhm.
personally in the sense of continuously also innovating and finding a way to add value to our customers.
Well, especially I mean, sometimes I call it the wild, wild west. It feels like we're kind of living in that era, to me at least, in terms of the regulations. They're constantly evolving, they're constantly changing, and they're not always super clear. And then with Convoso, you have the state by state laws on top of everything else. So how do you I would imagine that AI was a real blessing for you all in terms of making the management of that a little bit simpler. How does AI play a role in helping you all navigate these ever shifting, ever evolving regulations?
Great question. I would say we think that AI helps us work smarter by being able to make more real-time decisions using
Mhm.
large quantities of data, right? In the past, if you are a call center with, call it 50 or 100 agents, and you're generating thousands of leads every day at that point, you're a decent sized operation. You're talking about over time, because you're not going to convert every lead on the first call attempt you make or the first day. It just doesn't work that way. We wish that were the case.
Sadly, that would be great. Save me a lot of time.
There's sales cycles, people that don't make major life decisions right away. So because of that, you find yourself having a larger database of leads. And what that means is now you're going from, if you're just starting out from 1,000 leads to, after a week, you might have 7,000 leads, right? And it just compounds and you get more and more. You might have 50 or 100, 200,000 leads in your database that you're trying to find a way to dial through. And so for us, AI has the ability to really just make sense of that data on the back end
Mm.
to figure out how to make better decisions on behalf of our customers when it comes to the dialing that they're doing.
Right.
And
And
then there's
help optimize their workflows as well. So you've described Ignite, which is the big new release, as phase one. So without giving too much away, what is the long-term vision for Convoso and how will you use this kind of AI-driven engine to evolve beyond just DID management, which of course you already have, to
yeah,
continue to optimize other aspects of your customers' workflow?
another great question. I would say at the end of the day, why are people so gravitated towards AI? Because in my mind, it's all about automation in
Mm.
some form or shape, making things easier. So for us, it's how do we automate as much of the management side of things as well so that we can compound the value that our customers get from
Mm.
using the software. And the platform has a lot of capabilities, feature settings. I mean, you're talking about 1,000 different areas that you can touch and do things.
Right,
So for us, it's like, how do we help them without them having to learn how to do all of that,
right.
and putting it in a place where, in a perfect place, they just turn on a switch and that just delivers the value they're looking for without them having to make decisions on an everyday basis, every second basis, every minute basis.
Right. We're not quite there yet, but you know what? Hopefully soon. What is the sort of magic combination of these key strategies? Like, are you just tapering redials? Are you prioritizing high intent leads? What do you need to sort of pair that with Ignite to maximize your results and to keep that calling ecosystem that you've created healthy and off those spam lists?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, you touched the first one, and I've said this a lot, but it is certainly do your best to uh, call on high intent leads. By high intent, we're referring to someone who actually filled out a form to request the product or service that you're looking to sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the number one, because they're typically more likely to want to pick up the phone, right? If they fill out the form they're looking to for something, they're more likely to pick up. So that's one. You need to have, like I said, omnichannel approach, texting, calling, emailing. So you're not just always calling them. You need to limit the redial attempts. Like we talked about, it's like don't know where the point of diminishing returns is after how many call attempts, but also the number of times you call them per day. Maximum, listen, on the first day, you can try 2 to 3 times and then try to taper it off thereafter. But if you're bombarding them more than 2 to 3 times in that first day, you're going to potentially get flagged.
Mm-hmm.
Then telco carriers, they don't like short duration calls.
Right.
They'd rather do business with a vendor that's connecting calls where, I might be calling my friend and I'm going to have a minute long, 5 minute long conversation. Whereas with outbound dialing, you're talking about calling a lead, and if they don't answer, it goes to voicemail. Well, the dial hangs up. That could be, you know, 5 seconds, 12 seconds, right? Very short by nature. So what you want to do is the higher the quality leads are, the more like the longer duration is, because people are going to pick up. And if they don't, as long as you have consent, this is very important. We have something called smart voicemail drops, which
Mm-hmm.
is when it hits a voicemail, you can strategically decide after which attempt it will leave a voicemail and the type of voicemail you want to leave. Maybe, after the first attempt they don't answer, you want to leave a voicemail letting them know who you are, that they fill out a form for health insurance, and here's your information, and for them to call you back. And if they don't respond, maybe after the fifth time you call them and it goes to voicemail, try leaving a second and maybe a final message, right, over a period of time. Well, now you're leaving that pre-recorded message, the length of the call increases, and you're not looking like an operation who's just calling and hanging up, or never ever call and just hang up. That is, I guess, the other aspect of it is you need to let the phone ring,
Everybody
and
watching, listen up.
you need to let the phone ring and give the person a chance to pick up the phone.
Right.
Otherwise, you have a lot of blocking apps. They track those kind of things. It's very easy to tell if you're abusing the consumer by calling and not hanging up, and those call patterns exist. Whereas if you're giving it an opportunity, you're actually operating like the consumer wants to be treated by, then you're less likely to get flagged, because you're trying to be responsible and respectful to the consumer's to the experience.
Right. Also, I just want to dive into some of the specific features of Convoso, in particular, the call catalyst tool, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that you've said that it has helped some of your customers reach and talk to, not just connect with, but actually speak to 20 times more leads than some of these other manual dialers that are out there. And that's a number that I think a lot of businesses, call centers would be very interested in. So you're dialing all these numbers, you're reaching all these leads. How does Call Catalyst, first of all, what is it? And then how does it balance the compliance needs with that operational demand for efficiency?
Call Catalyst, it's a product that is intended for when it comes to outbound dialing, you have businesses that are on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to compliance.
Mhm.
And how you decide what kind of technology to use to make an outbound call. So it's more of a product for those that are more on the much more on the conservative side, where they don't want to use a predictive dialer, even if they have consent. They want something that's more manual, where the agent is clicking on a number, but it's not necessarily automatic in a sense of a predicted dialer, which makes multiple calls simultaneously and only connects if there's somebody picking up the phone. So it's more so on for a compliance standpoint of view, and it gives you a productivity that while may not be the same as a predictive dialer, it can get close to it because it presents a list of phone numbers that you can have a dedicated person clicking on, and then when it answers the number, they transfer that call to an actual salesperson who have that conversation.
Mm.
So it really solves more of a comfort and compliance
It sounds like a
aspect.
peace of mind aspect
Yeah,
almost. For those
yeah,
that are with particularly tight regulations. And kind of with that, it seems like that one of the built-in guardrails that Convoso has is this state tracker tool for like, I guess it's for statewide TCPA laws.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, and what it offers to the customers? And is that also for heavily, heavily regulated industries, or a state tracker right for any and all businesses?
So I mean, every business that does outbound calling for sales purposes, you technically need, I mean, anyone of them, you need to comply with, like I said earlier, federal rules and state rules. And what's
Mhm.
happening is there are more and more states that are creating their own mini TCPA is what it's called, where they have specific requirements around what you are allowed to do when it comes to outbound dialing for sales purposes. So some of them have a requirement you can't call more than 3 times
Mhm.
a day. And what State Tracker does is you can define the state and the number of call attempts that you want to make at the most on a daily basis, and it will make sure that it's not dialing more than that if you have leads in that specific state. I believe it's like Washington, Connecticut, Florida, where they have specific limitations. And more states are doing it. And to be honest with you, it's not a bad thing because
No.
again, you got to put yourself in the shoes of the customer. How do they want to be treated? Don't over dial. And so State Tracker helps you do that in an automated way. We just kind of set the setting and forget it, and you will be fine.
Right. And switching gears a bit, you mentioned earlier about Convoso's omni-channel capabilities, and I think a lot of people just associate, because it's what you're known for, right? Convoso with that dialer, with the multimodal dialing that you offer. And so not only does Convoso offer voice, but it also offers SMS and email. So how have you seen omni-channel communication moving the needle in terms of getting your customers to get more leads on the phone and probably help with lead filtering as well?
Listen, it works for some and it doesn't work for others, to be honest with
Mm.
you, because depending on whether you have first-party leads versus third-party leads, it really makes a difference. You have the campaign registry, which makes it really challenging to get your campaigns approved. This is an organization where if you want your text messages to go through, you have to submit your application to them, letting you know what it is you're looking to do. And if you have third-party leads, and rightfully so to some extent, if they're a bit apprehensive about approving campaigns if you're not the actual originator of the lead, and or you're not the one that's selling the product or service. So we have customers that are both selling the product or service. That could be the health insurance agency,
Right.
or you can also have a marketing agency who will generate a qualified consumer and then sell that call to the health insurance agency. So depending on which side of you're at, the omni-channel, is geared more towards the actual health insurance agency, and it works well in the sense that, listen, they fill out the form to get a quote, and they might get a call, but they might not answer for a
Mhm.
variety of reasons. Well, you can automatically through workflow automation, you could orchestrate that sequence of what happens if the call doesn't get answered. Hey, let's send a follow-up text, right? And once they get that follow-up text, they can call back on that number and they can come back in. If they don't respond and the lead is still unresponsive, well, you can then set a sequence that will determine what happens next. Maybe send a follow-up email. And then on the third day, try another call. Well, if they don't answer, maybe try to leave a voicemail, right?
Mhm.
And then maybe try an email and maybe another text message. So over a longer period of time, if you do something like that, well, that's a little bit less, you know, intensive for the customer. They don't feel
Right.
bombarded so much, and then they get a chance to respond to the channel of their choice that they're more more likely to look at.
So can you talk a little bit more about how some of Convoso's features, particularly dynamic scripting and skills-based routing, really empower those agents to have more personalized conversations with both leads and existing customers?
Yeah, good question. So, when we talk about campaign management,
Mhm.
the way I look at it is how do you automate your calling campaign to maximize the contact rate and get the most leads on your phone, because you have to put all kinds of logic in there and test different things out, in the sense of like all the things that we just talked about, right? Setting up the
Mhm.
rules of like, when do you call the lead if it doesn't answer? When do you call it again? And maybe you stop dialing it and put into a different list that will try calling it again, maybe in 30 days from now, but not so aggressively, and doing that over a period of time, and moving into different types of lists. Maybe you want a list with your colder leads that they gave you consent, but maybe newer agents, you want to put them on those kind of lists. So through campaign management and automation, you can automate that whole process. But it's really more about going deep on filtering your leads and lead management, and how you go about doing that based on all kinds of criteria and available information on the lead: zip code, city, income level, credit score, whatever you want. You can automate all kinds of rules that will determine what happens with those leads to essentially maximize your contact rate. And when it comes to dynamic scripting, we just talked about the mini TCPA,
Mhm.
and more states have also, beyond just the number of call attempts you can make, the disclosures you have to give when you first, answer, when they first connect on a call. So dynamic scripting you can also do that based on the state that the lead is in, and it will have that disclosure language on there, so you can make sure that your agent
Right.
speaks off of it, because human error there's no way anybody's gonna remember every state's requirements. It's just impossible. So dynamic
Right.
scripting makes that very easy and simple. You can configure it. It will give it to you. You can do that. That's one aspect of it. You can also, based on certain custom fields and data, tailor a script according to that, so that they're having a different talk track when it comes to maybe the income level being one way or the other. And it just allows for more efficiency, which then also turns into a higher productivity and conversions on your leads.
Fascinating. Sounds great to me. And as we're talking about these things that you look for, like your credit score, the demographic, the age, income level, can you elaborate a bit on how Convoso's reporting tools, not just for the customers, but also for the agents and the outbound call centers, move beyond just simple data or KPIs to really help your customers drive profitability, especially when it comes to real-time insights, which we know is Convoso's big thing?
Yeah, so I would say, look, the customers that do best with us, the best practice they use, there are a few reports, one being a list conversion report, and they're watching that report like a hawk. If you're not watching that, it makes a difference between having a great day and a bad day by taking your eyes off of what's really converting and not. And in a call center environment for sales, you have a lot of activity, right? You're talking about making a lot of calls, and so every minute is important, to the point where if you're not making real-time decisions, you're losing out on conversions. So what I mean by that is, on a list conversion report, you can take the list, the specific list that you have. You might
Mhm.
have different lead sources and different lists for them to keep them organized. And you can run an hour by hour report and see which of those lists has more conversions, has a higher contact rate, which of your agents are converting better on some of them. And then you can decide to maybe, turn off certain lists that you've had, where the lead you might have you might have a Facebook list of leads that you've collected over the past 2 weeks, versus Google, or a specific campaign even within
Hmm.
Facebook. You might decide, you know what, on this day, you look at the results, you see, okay, the contact rate is down, conversions are down. Let's not keep dialing on that list. Let's turn it off temporarily because this other one we have has a higher contact rate and conversion rate. And by doing that, you're able to maximize the overall conversions and revenue for that day.
That's the name of the game, right? Let's talk about what many are saying is one of the next big trends in customer experience as a whole for 2026. I happen to agree, voice AI. What is your visceral gut reaction when I say voice AI? And also, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about what voice AI can and cannot do on the tail end of 2025 and going into 2026?
So look, there's a lot of buzz. I think there's a lot of hype around it. Do I think there's a lot of potential there? Yes. Do I think it's what everybody makes it out to be? No. What I think the biggest area that people are not paying attention to is regulation.
Hmm.
Regulation is, like we said, outbound dining is heavily regulated. And if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to all of those rules and regulations, you're going to find yourself out of business overnight because of
Literally.
what it is that you have to do. On the call, there are disclosures you have to state on the call. There are all of the rules that, the mini TCPA rules, the federal rules, the DNC, all of those things. And I think what's happening is a lot of businesses are saying, wow, this is great. We don't need a salesperson.
Right.
We don't, and I think you're far from it. So one, be very careful around that aspect of it. Consult an attorney, TCPA attorney, one who specializes in that, not your attorney that you use for everything else. And you just ask him to, hey, look into the law and then give you something. Make sure it's a TCPA attorney. There's Trabman and Mead, McMurray and Schuster. They're two very well-known firms that have a lot of knowledge in this space. So, I would say is make sure you're clear around the use case. What are you trying to
Mm.
achieve? What's your goal? I do believe there's an element of personalization and just sales and psychology where a human is very much needed. For customer
Agree.
service, I could see being a bit different, but for sales, we'll see. I think for some limited use case, it will be necessary. But if there's some selling you got to do and, some aspect of that, I think your AI is going to fall short in some aspect of it. Yes, it's getting smarter and better, but you're talking about businesses that spend sometimes $30, $50 a lead, even if they
Yeah.
spend less, and you're talking about quantity, you're not going to want to risk that on an AI that may or may not understand it.
Mm.
So in my mind, I think there's a future for it. The use case and what it is for is to be determined. I think them connecting together, there will be a need for a human along with an AI, but on the sales side of it, I'm not as convinced in terms of where it will go, depending on what your goal is with that call.
Right. Shifting a little bit into a more Nima's entrepreneurial story. Look back 18, 20 years ago over Convoso's history. Is there a single big bet that you wish you'd made sooner?
Think about that.
It's a hard question.
Single big bet. We're bootstrapped,
Hmm.
and when you're bootstrapped, you're constantly making trade-offs. And in any business, you have to make trade-offs all the time, whether you bootstrap or not. But being bootstrap on top of it, you have to make trade-offs that you may not always have to make because you only have finite resources, right?
Right.
So to me, it's I've said this before too, but it still holds true. It's really look at investing in your people in the sense of not trying to wear all the hats yourself. Bring in others who know more and have been there and done that. And that was hard earlier on. I think we got better with it over time. But you got to really, it's all about the people. Without the people, you cannot execute anything. You have the greatest idea, vision, product. I mean, you cannot build it all. You cannot get it out there, right? It's a team from A to Z, from sales, marketing, engineering, product, uh, finance. I mean, you name it. And so bringing in more earlier on would have potentially helped us get here faster, but I wouldn't change a thing because it helped me grow from where I was 20 years ago to now. And we have a great group of people now that I'm really excited about to continue the journey that we're on.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think all of us in the customer experience or in the call center, contact center space, we all have trouble relinquishing control. And I'm sure that's the same for founders too. But I mean, at least I certainly do. But wonderful, wonderful advice. And let other people's strengths shine, it sounds like is part of what you're saying as well. And again, to kind of piggyback on this Nima's entrepreneurial journey line of questioning that we're on now, you've always, one of the things that I think others admire about you is that you're very candid, and you're candid about, in particular, the struggles from just daily outages. Oh, we have no service right now in the early days, to this feeling of I'm not enough, this desire to compare yourself, and all of that ended up fueling your desire to learn and grow. And again, with the continuous evolution that you've made a part of your brand and personality. So sales leaders also feel that pressure that I'm not good enough, that I have this whole team on my shoulders, it all rests on me. So these people that are dealing with self-doubt and pressures from above while trying to lead a team according oftentimes to somebody else's vision and desires, what would you say to help inspire them? And how do you suggest that they get through those hard times?
Yep. So there's one very powerful lesson that one of my mentors taught me, and it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. But if you can use this as a compass to make decisions, you'll always find yourself on the better end of the scenario and what's to come. But it's basically when you're in a predicament or something is going on, if the decision that you have to make and the action that you have to take is coming from a place of fear, doubt, lack, that is the wrong decision. So whereas, the other decision is coming from a place of abundance, certainty, you got to take that other route. Even if, it's the harder one to go, and you might perceive that there's a lot more to lose, always take that other route, because you'll find yourself back in that same boat. And it's very hard to do, but just figure out, like, if fear was not an option, what would you do? And do that.
Yeah, that's
practice it, pay attention, and see what happens. You might not see it in the moment. It might feel really scary, but don't use fear as the reason why you don't do something. If you can take that out and come from a place of abundance, love, certainty, take that action, and you'll be coming out in a better place, and you'll gain a lot more confidence. You're going to expand. You're going to be, you're going to grow a lot from it. It might be a brutal stretch from going in that direction, but once you're out of it, you're going to become your next level person. And I firmly believe that.
Thank you, Nima. Great advice. And it's difficult for myself and many others to follow, but yeah, don't be ruled by fear. Take the risk. And even if you land on your face, I like the quote, I can't remember who said it, shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you're still going to be among the stars. Same energy. Yeah. So just kind of wrapping up, a final question. Let's take it back to Convoso. Can you, if you're able, give us a hint about what's next for next year? Any other features or functionalities that you're considering adding? Or if you could add one dream feature to Convoso tomorrow, no setup, no drama, it just worked, what would it be?
You don't need a dialer admin. It does it by itself. It operates on the back end itself. You don't need an administrator. The system will just run for you. Because that's something a lot of operations struggle with. Large, small, it doesn't matter.
That sounds great. I'd love that. So from Kinder Surprise Eggs to Convoso, Nima Hakimi, the CEO and co-founder of Convoso, Ferrari level dialer and call and contact center software. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all the candid insights that you shared with us and our audience today. And we look forward to continuing the conversation in the future.
Thank you, Katherine. This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nima. Okay, perfect. We're off. We're cut.